It's Congress's last legislative week of 2023, and both chambers are staring down hefty to-do lists before lawmakers break for the holiday recess. Towards the top of that list for the Senate is striking a deal on border security to unlock aid for Ukraine, a goal that will come under acute focus when Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visits Washington. Zelensky is scheduled to meet with Senators, Speaker Mike Johnson, and President Biden on Tuesday, giving the Ukrainian president one last opportunity to ask the U.S. for support before lawmakers leave for the holiday recess. Republicans in both chambers have demanded border security be paired with aid for Ukraine, but a bipartisan group of senators has struggled thus far to find consensus on the politically charged topic after weeks of negotiations. On the House side this week, lawmakers will vote to authorize the Republican conference's impeachment inquiry into President Biden.
Our investigation continues to produce evidence revealing President Biden's corruption and litany of lies.
Then Speaker Kevin McCarthy opened the investigation on his own accord in September, opting against holding a formal vote.
I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden.
But as the inquiry enters a more combative phase, which includes trying to land high-profile witnesses, Republicans have determined it's time to hold a formal vote on authorizing the probe.
This vote is not a vote to impeach President Biden. This is a vote to continue the inquiry of impeachment, and that's a necessary constitutional step.
The vote also comes after the White House argued that the GOP's investigation was not legitimate because it had not been established through a formal House vote. The House this week will also hold votes on two separate proposals to reform Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which governs the U.S.'s warrantless surveillance powers. Members on the House Judiciary Committee and the House Intelligence Committee are advocating for different reforms to the surveillance powers, setting up a bitter battle in the House.
I think letting 702 lapse would be short-sighted at best and dangerous in the extreme at worst. To be clear, 702 is what allows us to get eyes on foreign threats overseas that pose national security threats to people here in the homeland.
Speaker Johnson says he plans to settle the disagreement through a procedural maneuver known as Queen of the Hill. Both proposals will receive a vote on the floor this week, and whichever garners more support will be sent to the Senate for consideration. Also on the agenda for both chambers this week is approving the annual defense bill known as the National Defense Authorization Act.
Now, the NDAA is a down payment on one of the most important issues facing our country today.
The legislation overcame its first procedural hurdle in a bipartisan Senate vote last week.
This year's National Defense Authorization Act will help meet the dangerous national security moment we face. It will equip our military with many of the tools necessary to implement the National Defense Strategy.